and Fred Hicks, a veteran Democratic strategist and consultant. It's great to have you both here. Let's start with this. We heard from Republican Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr earlier in the show. He's jumped in with both feet. He's running for governor in 2026. Okay. Spiro, I want to start with you. Who else should we be watching for as we are looking ahead to that election year that is feeling closer and closer?
Sure. Well, I think you have to start by looking at Governor Kemp and Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, what they decide to do or not do. Obviously, Governor Kemp is term limited and can't run for governor again. But I think Lieutenant Governor Jones has obviously shown interest in that, but has not made a formal announcement. Once he makes a decision on what he's going to do, then I think you will see a lot of dominoes fall on the Republican side. The session ends on April 4th. I think within 30 days of that, probably by May 1st, you're going to see the floodgates open, would be my guess.
The session ends, and that's sort of the starting bell for campaign season. Really? Is that the case, Fred?
Absolutely. So there is a disclosure period that, or report that will be due June 30th. And so to Spiro's point and to your point, Zach, once we get past the April 4th session, then people will be in a sprint, not just to announce, but to raise money and to have a strong showing and that is on that disclosure report.
We've heard a lot in past panel discussions, and Spiro, you brought this up as well, that Governor Brian Kemp, he's a very popular statewide elected official, a very popular governor, all other things being equal. And we've heard a lot of people, yourself included, say Governor Kemp, he's the first domino to fall. What he decides to do in 2026 or 2028 will help frame out the rest of the race for other folks seeking these major statewide positions. On the Democratic side, Fred, who are you watching for to be getting into these races?
So Spiro used the term domino effect, and I think that's what we're going to see. So in the governor's race, I think we're going to see Congresswoman Lucy McBath. She's filed her preliminary paperwork for that.
The exploratory committee that she spun up about a week ago.
Correct. Former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms continues to send signals that she's considering it. There's a little speculation in Democratic circles that Stacey Abrams, the two-time nominee, is considering it. We also have heard that State Senator Jason Estevez is kicking the tires, as well as former DeKalb CEO Michael Thurman and other people, like potentially former Chick-fil-A executive Rodney Bullard as well. So that's going to be an interesting field. And once that is settled, then we'll see people slot for other races like Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, State Superintendent of Schools, and all of that. But once that field sort of coalesces, then we'll see everything else.
These are going to be busy, full primaries. Spiro, I want to spend one last moment on this and then shift topics here, but I think it's germane. It's worth mentioning here. And probably on the Democrat side too, Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, but are we gearing up to see a situation in these primaries, particularly for governor, where we're going to see the divisions within the parties? We're going to see some folks stake out a more, relatively speaking, centrist position. You saw Chris Carr really referencing Governor Brian Kemp a lot in that interview.
Right.
We've seen other folks like Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones over the past few years more closely align himself with President Donald Trump. There has been some friction between President Trump and Governor Kemp at times in the past. Are we going to see these dynamics play out in the primary?
Sure, I think you will. I think that's naturally part of the political process, whether it's in the Republican primary or Democrat primary. They all have to, play to the base, so to speak. But the trick to that is also thinking about the general election and, making sure that you can capture middle-of-the-road voters in November. But I definitely think you'll see some of those constitutional officers start to take a look at these statewide races.
Let's shift gears here. We've got about 60 seconds left. Fred, to you, we're in the back half of the legislative session right now. What unfinished business under the Gold Dome are you watching?
So I'm watching this bill, the Sanctuary City bill, and then of course the tort reform bill is something that we're looking at as well.
Spiro?
Yeah, tort reform, public safety is obviously an issue. The school safety bill, which has passed the House and is now over in the Senate. Tort reform has come from the Senate to the House, so they each have issues in play. The girls' sports issue and the state budget. Frankly, the House has now passed the fiscal year 26 budget over to the Senate, and in these last 3 weeks, you'll see the House and the Senate and the governor's office all negotiating over how that money is going to be spent.
Spiro, I want to talk to you first. Governor Brian Kemp's top priority has been tort reform. It's still moving its way through the legislature. Is this going to get passed?
We'll see. I mean, it passed the state Senate, which is very significant. There was an amendment to the bill. It's now in the House, where the Speaker has it in the Rules Committee and a special subcommittee of rules to vet the bill. They've had several hearings. It's obviously generating a lot of attention. Many press conferences at the Capitol
A really
between
high-profile
business
marquee
community
thing.
and victims' rights groups. So I suspect that reasonable heads will get together and ultimately they will pass a bill.
And on that note, I hate to cut you off, Spiro, about 20 seconds to you. Fred, the governor has threatened calling a special session if this doesn't get done. Could we see that?
I think it's very possible. He, the lieutenant governor, and the speaker have all said this is their top priority. I will say that now that it's moved to the House, that the anti-tort reform groups have really sort of coalesced, and they are mounting a much more vigorous campaign.
So there's a lot more road ahead for tort reform.
A lot more.
Guys, we